But very, very concerned about the city of Danbury and what I think are some bad changes in our community that really aren't getting scrutinized by the local newspaper. And I think probably a lot of people would agree with me that there's been a big change in the Danbury News-Times since it was taken over by the Connecticut Post.
Okay, but you think a major case in point in this is the lawsuit with the fire department, and you wanted to talk about that?
I wanted to talk about the Danbury firefighter suit because it really wasn't very adequately covered by the Danbury News-Times. And we're talking about a lawsuit or an action that's been kicking around for 5 years. It's actually September of 2010 now. But Danbury has a civil service commission, and they create lists of eligible candidates for civil service employment in the city of Danbury. And you say, well, why do they have civil service? Well, I think everyone knows that back in the day, there wasn't civil service. There was political patronage. Your uncle did this, your nephew did that, your aunt did this. The jobs were given away as political favors in order to have a loyal following. But we have a civil service system. It's a system where there is not supposed to be any bias, any favoritism, any nepotism whatsoever in it. And most people would stand up and applaud and say, that's a good thing. I'd like to think that people would be hired on the basis of their ability. So, to make a long story short, in 2005, the city needed to hire entry-level firefighters. We needed them. And in order to begin that hiring and that appointment and send them out to training, the city had to create a list of eligible candidates. So they advertised for this position, and it's a great position. Men and women can both apply, but they advertised, and applicants paid a $75 fee, and they sat for an examination. So we're talking about a good job that's available, that you have to sit for an examination in order to qualify. All right, this happened in August of 2005. Anyone who was interested and paid that $75 could sit for the exam. And the result was that sometime in October, the City Civil Service Commission certified a list of eligible candidates. Now, you may not understand this, but in a competitive exam, if you're the number one, if you place first, that's great. And if you place 164th on the list, it's going to be a long while before they reach before they reach your number. So we have an exam. They actually sat for a written exam in August, and in September there was an oral exam which all of the candidates had to sit through, and the written exam counted for 60% of your rank, and the oral exam counted for 40%. Now, what do you get when you add 60 and 40?
100 last
100. Well, you know, I thought so too. Mm-hmm. So that there are no other elements in this competitive exam. 100% is 100%. So all of the candidates were ranked, and then some very unusual things happened. And this was in 2005. I think the most unusual thing was before the Civil Service Commission certified the list, the mayor appointed 6 candidates to the fire department for these positions. Now, what would you think who do you think he would pick?
Those were the best scores.
I would hope so. Well, what he actually did was on October 3rd, he asked the city council to approve number 3. That was one of his choices. Number 6, number 11, number 13, number 14, and number 15. And those appointments were approved. And that was round 1 from that list.
Let me just interrupt for a second, Lynn. Now, with the selection process, was that a typical modus operandi? Does the mayor typically make those choices?
The mayor has the sole authority to make those appointments. Nobody else. It's his sole authority. So in October of 2005, there was a first round, and And he didn't pick number 1. He didn't pick number 2. We have no idea why he didn't do that. But the problem there was that he chose those candidates. He recommended their appointment before there was a valid list. The list was not approved by the Civil Service Commission until October 19th.
And that's
a no-no.
strange. That's a no-no. Okay.
That's a no-no. That doesn't follow your Civil Service rules. But all of the candidates who had sat for the exam were informed of their ranking. So I think they all had expectations that appointments would go forward and that people who scored higher on the exam would be picked before people who did less well, who did poorer on the exam. And that actually isn't what happened.
What were the rankings again that the mayor chose? The numerical
well, in his first rankings, it was 3, 6, 11, 13, 14, and 15.
Okay. That's skipping over a lot. Okay.
It's skipping over a lot. Yeah. It gets worse than that. There was a second round of hiring because we did need entry-level firefighters, and that wasn't until March of 2006. And at that time, we were very happy to see that he picked number 1, but then it was 5, 9, 19, 21, and 24, so that he wasn't exactly going by the numbers. And
now, did he skip the commission on the second round too?
The commission creates the list. They certified it in October of 2005. Okay. That list is good for 2 years.
Got it.
You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it every year, but you have to create a list that's merit-based, that we know is devoid of any kind of bias or favoritism. It's just based solely on your ability in a competitive exam on how you ranked.
Okay.
And that isn't how it worked out. I think what people might be interested in is that the plaintiffs in the lawsuit, the people who sued the city because of these unusual appointments, were ranked number 8 on the list and number 18. So they were pretty good candidates.
Now, these lawsuits have now. What is the sequence here? How much time passed between?
2 years passed before a lawsuit was filed, and 2 more years passed before the lawsuit was settled.
Okay.
But I think the point I want to make is that we have 2 plaintiffs here. One who was ranked number 8 on the eligibility list. The other who was ranked 18th. And I have to tell you that in civil service, you would say a person who got a score of 40 is less qualified than the person who's got a score of 8. I mean, that's how it works. And we didn't see that operate this way in this hiring. So there was a second round of hiring, and the numbers went all over the place. In July of 2006, there was another round of hiring, and this time, number 2 was selected, number 7, number 16. There was a 4th round in September of 2006, and I thought this was a very unusual appointment. The candidate who was ranked 53rd out of all of the other candidates was selected, all by himself.
And the lawsuit, by this point, the lawsuits had begun?
The lawsuits had began in 2007, so there weren't lawsuits yet.
There weren't. Okay, got it.
In February of 2007, there were 5 additional appointments made, and now we're looking at numbers that are ridiculous. Number 40 was selected, number 34, number 38. One of the selections in this this 5th round in February of 2007 was a candidate who was engaged to the daughter of the acting fire chief. Now, the fire chief has no authority to make appointments. That's the sole authority of the mayor. But it's certainly, given the number that he had on the exam, which was a 40, and the fact that number 8 was still not chosen at this point, 2 years after applying to be an entry-level firefighter, that the mayor requests the appointment of someone who is betrothed to the chief's daughter. This isn't right. I think this is maybe where the plaintiffs actually started thinking that there was something wrong, that mistakes were being made. Well, in June of 2007, there were 10 more appointments, and by now we're looking at the city choosing candidates who were 100th. 77th on the list. And in my mind, in a competitive exam, they were less qualified than the two candidates who had never been given an appointment. Finally, another 6 appointments were made in April of 2008 when the list had expired.
Okay.
So the list wasn't valid. Appointments were made from it. One of the appointments had ranked 164 on the exam, and he was the son of the chairman of the Civil Service Commission. All right?
So that was another break in due process, that the list had expired.
How could you call it a break? Number 164 is picked before number 8. No, that doesn't make sense at all. So that's where we had a real case of the city not acting in good faith in terms of calling this a civil service eligibility list, calling it a merit examination, and yet picking people who were either relatives or going to be relatives of the fire chief, or people who were relatives of the chair of the Civil Service Commission. So I'm not surprised that the plaintiffs were able to sue, and in court presented all of these facts. And the end result was that the city of Danbury agreed to settle the lawsuit. What does that mean? It means that they were not going to take it to trial and say, we did nothing wrong, we're not at fault, we picked the very best candidates, we followed all the civil service rules.
So it's kind of a tacit admission of guilt?
I think so, it is. Yeah. It's a settlement. And it's a settlement that resulted in the city paying the plaintiffs $450,000, appointing them as entry-level firefighters, and in some way trying to make up for the 5 years of missed promotion and service credits that they would have gotten if they had been hired through the civil service process, as it should have worked.